On stage, he was a wizard. He was a small man with a giant voice, and he was throwing those devil horns to a sea of fans. He was singing about dragons, rainbows in the dark, and holy divers. Ronnie James Dio looked like the warmest, most magical figure in all of heavy metal. I mean, even his fans called him one of the nicest men in the business, but behind that curtain, there was a business, a tightly run, top-down business. And the guitar player who helped build that empire says he was getting paid less than the guys who set up the lights. This is the story of one of metal's ugliest money fights. A broken promise, a fired guitar hero, and a feud so bitter, the two men never made peace before one of them died. This is the story of a band that was sold to us as a brotherhood, and the hard truth of who was really in charge. So let's set the stage. By the early 1980s, Ronnie James Dio, he was already a legend. He had already fronted the band Rainbow. He had replaced Ozzy Osbourne in Black Sabbath and made 2 incredible studio albums. So when he walked away from Sabbath to start his own band, he wasn't some kid with a dream. He was an established star who knew exactly how the music business worked. And he was going to do things his way this time because he had been burned twice before. So he named the band after himself, Dio. He brought in the powerhouse drummer Vinny Appice from Black Sabbath, bassist Jimmy Bain, who he had known from his Rainbow days, and a young, hot, blazing guitar player from Northern Ireland named Vivian Campbell. And here's the thing about that lineup. To the fans, it looked like a gang. I mean, 4 guys, 1 logo, 1 mission, charging into battle together. It felt like a band of brothers, but it wasn't really a band in the way that fans imagined it was. It was a star in his employees. And the gap between how it looked and how it actually worked is where all the trouble actually lived. So let's go back to the very beginning, to a rehearsal room in London where the deal was made. According to Vivian Campbell, who has told the same story for decades, Ronnie sat the 3 of them down and he laid out the plan. Money was tight, the band was brand new, and Ronnie was funding it. So Ronnie asked them to make a sacrifice. Work for a very low wage to start. Don't ask for a piece of the album sales or tour money or merchandising money. He said, just trust me. And here was the payoff that he promised those 3 men. By the 3rd album, Ronnie would make it an equal partnership. The players would finally become real partners, getting a fair share of the record sales and the tour profits. Everyone would be equal. So they agreed, and they sacrificed. When they were first rehearsing and recording the debut album, 1983's Holy Diver, Vivian Campbell says they were each paid just $100 a week. I mean, let that sink in, $100 a week. They were creating one of the greatest heavy metal albums ever recorded. I mean, this is a record that would sell millions of copies while earning $100 a week. Now, Campbell put it bluntly. During those early days, they were earning less than their own road crew, less than the lighting guy. Now, I'm going to be fair here because the pay did go up. So once Holy Diver, that album came out, the tour started, and their salary did jump to $400 a week, and it kept climbing tour by tour after that. So this isn't some story about a man literally stuck making $100 a week forever, but it is a story about a promise. The low starting wage wasn't really what caused the wound. The broken promise was. Because here's what happened. The band, they exploded. I mean, Holy Diver in 1983, it was a smash hit almost right away. The Last in Line, which came out in 1984, that was even bigger. And they were already starting to hit the arenas. I saw them on that tour. So they were big by then. And they even got bigger by 1985's Sacred Heart. I mean, they were a headlining arena act with a massive stage show complete with a giant mechanical robotic dragon. They were global superstars. I mean, the mission everyone had sacrificed for had succeeded behind or beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And the business behind it was run with total control. I mean, the band's manager was Wendy Dio, Ronnie's wife. The money, the decisions, the direction, all of that flowed through Ronnie and Wendy. Nothing happened that they didn't approve. So now you picture Vivian Campbell. He's a young guitar hero. I mean, he really was. He's playing to packed arenas every night. Fans are screaming his name. From the outside, he's living the dream. But he's looking at that contract and he's remembering the promise from the rehearsal room in London. The third album, Sacred Heart, has come and gone. And that equal partnership that was discussed, the piece of the pie he was promised, it never came. And that's a poison that builds slowly. Every sold out show, every truckload of merchandise, every gold record, platinum record on the wall, it's a reminder of money that he was promised, but a share of it that he never got. The bigger the band got, the angrier he got. So Campbell did the one thing you're not supposed to do in what essentially is a corporate top-down operation. He spoke up. In his own words, he became the squeaky wheel. He pushed for better money. He brought up that original promise from London. But in a band that's built entirely around one man's total control, pushing back on the business side wasn't seen as Vivian asking a fair question. It was instead treated as disloyalty, a betrayal of the team. And here's where that story splits into two very different versions. And I'm going to give you both versions because with Ronnie gone, we may never know that full truth. So Campbell's version is simple. It was about the money. He says he was fired because he kept complaining about the low pay and a broken gentleman's agreement. He has stuck to that same promise for nearly 40 years. But the Dio camp, they tell it differently. Wendy Dio has flatly denied it was just about the money. She claimed that the musical chemistry had simply gone sour and that Vivian didn't want to play heavy rock or metal anymore. I mean, she even said, quoting Ronnie, that Campbell wasn't contributing anything to the table creatively by that third album. In reality, the band had started using more commercial keyboards and radio-friendly sounds, and that was a direction that Vivian Campbell disliked. But in the eyes of Ronnie and Wendy, Vivian's constant complaining means that he had checked out. So take your pick. You have a boss breaking a promise to keep the profits, or a guitarist whose attitude had ruined the band's chemistry. I mean, the truth is probably somewhere tangled up in between those two, but everyone agrees on one thing. By early 1986, the relationship was broken beyond repair. And the end came right in the middle of the Sacred Heart tour. Vivian Campbell's last show with Dio was January 12, 1986 in Honolulu, Hawaii. And he was gone. He was fired. Now here's the part that turned a business dispute into a lifelong feud. The way it was spun to the public. So for years afterwards, the message coming out of the Dio camp was that Vivian had left the band voluntarily, that he walked away on his own. And that detail, that enraged Viv. I mean, Campbell, more than anything else, because it was a lie. He didn't quit. He was pushed out. Being fired over a money fight, that was bad enough, but having the story rewritten to make it look like you abandoned the fans was the insult that stuck. And here's something important to keep things fair. This wasn't a case of the other bandmates cheering Campbell on the way out the door. Drummer Vinny Appice said he was incredibly disappointed and confused when Ronnie told him that they were letting Viv go. He confirmed it was a money issue and noted that they had all been promised percentages that never showed up. Bassist Jimmy Bain went even further. He later called firing Vivian the biggest mistake of Ronnie's career, saying it was handled in a cowardly way and that it could have all been solved if Ronnie and Wendy had simply been willing to give Vivian a fair contract. In other words, the other musicians in the band sided with the guy who got fired. So what did it cost? First, it cost the music. This is up for debate, but plenty of fans and even Jimmy Bain himself felt the band declined after that classic original lineup broke up. I would agree with him. I really would. And Bain said Dio should have gotten better with each album, but instead the sound got watered down with heavy keyboards and weaker songs. Campbell's specific fiery, fast guitar style was a core part of the magic on those first 3 records, and the band never quite recaptured it. The second thing it cost was Ronnie's flawless reputation. Remember, Ronnie James Dio was beloved. He was known as the ultimate nice guy of metal, the friend to the fans who would stand outside in the cold signing autographs for hours. For the most part, that reputation was real and well earned, but the Vivian Campbell feud is the one giant crack in it. The two men insulted each other in the press for decades. Ronnie called Vivian Campbell ungrateful, and Campbell called Ronnie a liar. It got nasty, and it stayed nasty. And then time ran out. Ronnie James Dio died of stomach cancer in 2010. And the two men, they never made peace. They never sat down, never shook hands, and never buried the hatchet. Vivian Campbell has said since that he deeply regrets how it all ended. He noted that if the two of them could have just met up alone in a room without all the lawyers and Wendy Dio and management involved around them, they probably could have shared a beer and sorted it out. I mean, Vivian Campbell even formed a band called Last in Line with his old bandmates, partly to honor the music and make peace with his past. But he never got to make peace with the man himself. That door closed forever in 2010. So what's the real lesson here? It's about the gap between the myth and the machine. On stage, Dio sold us a fantasy. Magic, dragons, brotherhood, and a gang of warriors fighting side by side, and we believed it because that's what the music made us feel. But underneath that fantasy was a cold business reality, a star, his manager, wife, and a team of employees who were promised a share of the kingdom and never got it. The fantasy that said, we're in this together. The contract said something very different. And that's the cautionary tale here. When you mix larger than life art with cold business, someone usually gets hurt. The fans, they see the brotherhood. The lawyers see the contracts and the paperwork. And the guy playing the guitar solo that millions of people love can still go home with a paycheck smaller than the crew's, stewing over a promise that wasn't kept. Today, a lot of fans look back on the firing of Vivian Campbell as the moment the magic of that original Dio lineup, it died. It was a turning point where the business won and the chemistry lost. They were two enormously talented men who made some of the greatest metal ever recorded, but they let money and pride keep them apart until it was too late to fix. The music they made, it still sounds immortal. But the men who made it, turns out, were all too human. So if you got something out of this one, please hit the like and subscribe buttons because there are more rock stories and more rock history coming like this one in the future. So in the comments below, please let me know, which side were you on? Were you on Team Ronnie or Team Vivian? Or were they both just a little bit right? Or was there a different story that you think was the real story? And I'll see you in the next one.